Welcome to the June 8th, 2021 regular meeting of the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. Will everyone please join me for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I just want to say thank you for everyone for showing up in the audience today. It's been quite some time since we've seen a group like this, and it's, no matter where your stance is, it's refreshing to have you here to be able to voice your opinions. Ms. Glanville, will you please report out on the last closed session?
May 27th, report of closed session. Item number 1, public employment pursuant to Government Code Section 54657B1, County Administrative Officer. There was no reportable action taken.
Thank you, Ms. Glanville. We'll move to staff announcements. This is a time for county staff to provide updates of upcoming county events that may be of interest to the public. Do we have staff comments?
Yes, we do. Supervisor Stopper, good morning. Chair Stopper, respective board members, Deputy Clerk of the Board, and Calaveras community. Lisa Medina, Environmental Management Agency. This past weekend, we had another successful rabies and microchip clinic here on our government center in campus. Our friends of Calaveras Animal Services Focus and our volunteer veterinarians, Kathy and Steve Gaitlin, administered over 133 vaccines and 75 microchips. We also received over $504 in donations from our generous community. Thank you to our Calaveras community. To date, we have vaccinated 358 animals at our clinics and microchipped 204 animals of our community's fur babies. We cannot thank Focus volunteers and Dr. Kathy and Steve Gaitlin enough for always being there for our animal services and those in our care. In May, our dog volunteers gave over 190 hours of their precious time to our four-legged pups, and Bolt, Suki, and Chester were adopted by loving people. Our next free rabies and microchip clinic will be held in September, as July and August are too hot for humans and their fur babies. Animal Services and Focus wish you a great summer, and we hope to see you soon in September at Spence Feed and Supply and Angels Camp for our next free clinic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Medina. Further staff comments or announcements?
I do not see any.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the public health update. Informational item, Public Health Services receive an update presentation from staff on COVID-19 novel coronavirus. Ms. Allen.
Good morning. Corey Allen, Health and Human Services Agency. It's nice to see you, Chair Stopper, members of the board. This morning, the team and I will simply be providing you. Let's get this started for you. As you can see, I'm not able to get it to slide the way I'm hoping, but you can still see the first slide as we go. I'm here today with Doug Archer, your CEO of Dignity Health, and Dr. Ramirez, your County Health Officer, to update you with the novel coronavirus COVID-19 update. As you can see, this is information you can access at any time at the Calaveras County website. We have conducted 44,026 tests to date. We have a confirmed number of 2,195 cases. Active today is 7, and CBPH reports 2 hospitalizations at this time. Vaccinations, we have administered 35,117. 2,132 individuals have recovered, and unfortunately we have seen 56 deaths. Tier assignment was assigned yesterday at noon. That continues to remain in the orange or moderate tier. You can see the yellow is continuing to grow and the red is starting to drop. That is an optimistic sign. And as we all know, starting June 15th, the blueprint with the colored system will go away. But as of today and until that date, we continue to follow the guidelines under that moderate or orange tier. It's important to note, and I've done this each time now, is to look at the state versus the county metrics. The county is seeing 2.2 out of 100,000 new COVID cases, or the state is seeing 2.2 versus 3.9 per 100,000 here in Calaveras County. Our positivity rate also continues to trend higher at 3% versus 0.8 statewide. The county comparisons, if we're looking just sort of to our neighbors here in Calaveras and in Tuolumne, we're at the orange moderate level. Calaveras is currently sitting on 7 active cases, and you can see the total case comparison across the board from Amador to Tuolumne and Calaveras. So we're there sort of in the middle. Amador has, as of this last reporting time, remained in the yellow as well, with 11 active cases. So we want to talk about what's coming next. We have noted that on June 15th, all industries may return to usual operations. Of course, the expectation is common sense risk reduction measures, masking, and vaccinations. Continuing to do those 2 things, along with hand washing and other common sense things, will continue to help combat this issue. The state is holding that option to revisit the June 15th date if it's needed. The 2 criteria they will look at is an equitable vaccine availability for all Californians and consistently low burden of disease. Cal OSHA has a different set of timelines and standards that they're looking for the workplace. So we do here in Calaveras County, we'll see at least with the county operations, and intend to change the requirements of our current coronavirus 19 prevention plan. There is nothing in writing as of now, neither from Cal OSHA or from others. So as of now, there is no change to the mask requirements in public workplaces. Public-facing offices cannot ensure 100% vaccinated interface, but all questions relating to the workplace will, of course, be referred to your human resources. We do have now a new mobile vaccination ban. We have been talking about one that is dedicated to those that were homebound. This mobile vaccination plan is on loan to us from the state of California, and it is for anyone needing access at a mobile location. It will run Wednesdays through Sundays for the next 60 days. It is not only state funded, it is also state staffed, and we have dedicated local staff to really allow for that warm connection with our neighbors as well. This will increase your rural access. Walk-ins are welcome. I'm going to show you where we will be. Total vaccines right now, 35,000. 1 dose. How much of Calaveras residents have had 1 dose? About 50%. Fully vaccinated, we're at about 40%. You can see here, starting today, the clinics that will be available. Copperopolis, we move into Moke Hill tomorrow. You see Valley Springs on Thursday, the grocery outlet on Thursday as well. We're going to be at the Produce Days on Friday and the Angels Camp Farmers Market. Saturday on the 12th will be at Oak Shadows. So as you can see, very mobile, really trying to lean into our community here with that mobile van.
Miss Allen?
Again, yes, sir.
If you don't mind going back to the next, or the last slide.
Absolutely.
With 1 dose and fully vaccinated and 35,117 vaccines given, is that number based off of total population or 12 and older?
We have recalculated using the 12 and older population.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Ms. Allen.
You're welcome. And with that, I want to remind you, myturn.ca.gov, And if we continue to get vaccinated, the closer we will get to that sense of normalcy that we're all striving for. Any questions?
Ms. Calloway.
Ms. Allen, I'm reading a little bit of confusion between Cal/OSHA and what might come out on the 15th. So I do have a couple of questions, like 3 or 4. One, if indoors everyone has to mask, if one person in the room is not vaccinated, is that a Cal/OSHA? So let's take the boardroom. If those of us on this side of the barrier, if one of us have not been vaccinated, we all have to continue to wear a mask? To follow up on that, if we're outdoors, unvaccinated, have to wear masks, is this going to be applying to county staff, employees?
I can see the county council is ready to respond to that on the Cal/OSHA side. And yes, they are confusing and different. So, Sarah?
Yes, Supervisor Calloway, as Ms. Allen indicated, we don't yet have Cal/OSHA's written guidance, and things are therefore subject to change, or there may be minor details that change. But the short answer to your first question is yes, in the workplace, and including here at the county, unless we know that everybody is vaccinated, then masking is still required.
Okay. So on 731, distancing will be changed, and so will we be removing barriers, or is that too soon to say?
Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think it's the same concept as that unless we know that everybody is vaccinated, and that would include for departments which do interact with the public or have the public coming into their workspace. We obviously don't necessarily know whether members of the public are vaccinated, so the masking and the barriers will continue unless and until that changes.
Okay, so we will be following as county government Cal/OSHA rules.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Allen, the health order, has anything been said on whether the health order will be lifted or not?
We have Dr. Ramirez here on the line, and or Colleen with Health can respond to that.
There's been no decision right now to lift the health order as is. Keep in mind that we're to remain in line with the state. We can be more restrictive than the state, but we cannot be less restrictive than the state.
So there is no decision made on the health order, which is a separate issue than what might happen June 15th.
At this time, there's no change right now.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. How are the outlying clinics doing?
I'm going to have Colleen respond to that.
Hi, Supervisor Calloway. So we are doing our best to be out and about in the county and to really encourage folks to get vaccinated. But I'm not going to lie, it's been quite challenging. Most people either are not coming, or if they make an appointment, they're not showing up. And so we really encourage our community to take advantage of these many, many clinics that we're offering and get vaccinated. We're trying to offer all of the different kinds. We always offer Johnson & Johnson that one shot. So we really encourage, if you have questions or you're hesitant, definitely talk to your healthcare provider or somebody else that you trust to give you science-based information. And we just really encourage people to take advantage of these multiple clinics. But as of now, it's been pretty limited in the response by our community.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just like to echo Colleen's sentiment with regards to vaccination, and the question regarding the health order. I mean, if we want to move forward with this, it would be in the best interest of everybody to increase our numbers of vaccination as much as possible. This way we can get on to resuming a more normal sense of normalcy.
Thank you. Just a FYI, the Utica Grade sign, as you start up Highway 4 from Murphy's, has said, get vaccinated, go to my turn. So Caltrans is supportive. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further board questions or comments? With that, I'll move to public comment on the public health update. Do we have any public comment?
I do not have any on the line right now.
All right. If there's no further comments or questions by the board, I want to thank Ms. Allen and Dr. Ramirez. We appreciate the time you spent here, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Archer, if you have anything to add, there we go.
Hi, guys. No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Archer.
Yep.
With that, we'll move to general public comment. I just want to remind everyone, general public comments for a general comment, not to do with anything on the agenda, and I'll read it here. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30 minutes allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard. Do we have any public comment?
I have one public comment online.
Okay, we'll take it.
You may go ahead and start your public comment now.
Okay. I don't know how to turn on my camera here. Let me see. Okay, I guess you're not going to look at me. Well, here we go. Well, my name is Andrea Colavita Pinkham, and I am the field representative assigned to Calaveras County for SEIU 1021. I've sent in some written statements a couple of times, and I was going to show my face and introduce myself to those of you who I have not met yet. I have over 20 years of experience with SEIU, and I plan to use that experience when we negotiate our successor agreement with the county beginning next month. The membership has elected a great team, and they are eager to get to work. We look forward to having adequate preparation time over the next month so that we can begin negotiations. There's no time wasted on semantics. Additionally, we are looking forward to negotiating in person and adhering to all necessary safety protocols. Getting a fair and equitable contract done on time is in the best interest of the membership and the residents of Calaveras County alike. Unfortunately, the items related to the assessor's office are being pulled from today's agenda. We have several questions related to how that office functions and if they are doing so within the bounds of our MOU. We did receive some answers to our request for information late yesterday afternoon, and we will be reviewing those. Unfortunately, at first look, they may lead to even more questions about how that office operates. We met with Human Resources twice on the issues, but Ms. Davis has not joined our discussion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andrea. Any further public comments?
I have none on the line right now.
Are there any comments in the room?
I'm not sure exactly. I'm here to talk about the fireworks ban. So would this be the time?
It'll be during the agenda item when it comes up. You'll have ample opportunity to make a
Okay, so
comment.
you're talking about public comment that that is not on the agenda.
Right,
Okay.
exactly. Thank you very much. No further comment? With that, we'll move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion. Are there any board members that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Are there any staff members that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Are there any other parties that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Nothing? All right. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move these items, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Toffenelli.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Garamendi. We have a motion by Mr. Toffenelli, a second by Mr. Garamendi. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Moves on a 5-0 vote of the board. 9:30. Good time. We'll move on to the regular agenda at this time. Resolution, Human Resources. Adopt a resolution appointing the county administrative officer and authorize the board chair to sign the employment agreement. Ms. Hawkins.
Sorry, I was joining as a panelist. Good morning. Good morning, members of the board. Judy Hawkins, Human Resources and Risk Management Director. I am happy to bring before you today a resolution for you to vote on adopting or appointing our county administrative officer. So I am proposing to you Ms. Krista Von Lotta as our county administrative officer. She has been serving as our interim officer and has, in opinion of many, doing a very good job. So I will leave it to you for any questions.
Any questions or comments by the board members? Ms. Calloway.
This agreement is for 3 years. I think it should be 4, the same as county council. I'd like to see it modified.
Is there any, at this, I'll bring that back around after comments, if you're all right with that, Ms. Calloway. Any further board comments? All public comment? Not this time. Anybody in the room? No? Okay, then I'll bring it back to the board. Ms. Von Lotta, these last 3 to 4 months, you've filled a void. I really appreciate the work you've done. It seems that we've moved forward more refined. You've really shown a great amount of, purpose and dedication to the county. You've been here for quite some time. I really appreciate everything you've done. And at this point, you've earned this vote that's about to come before us. So I really appreciate that. So I want to give any other board members opportunities to talk, and then we'll discuss Ms. Calloway's proposal for a 4-year term after other board members say what they have to say. Mr. Toffenelli.
Yeah, I just echo what Ben had to say about you. You've done a great job for us in the interim position part of it. So, thank you.
Let's keep it going. So, do we want to entertain moving the contract from a 3 to 4 year? Mr. Toffenelli.
I believe it's 2 years, 4 years. This was a negotiated contract.
Right.
So if we change anything in it, then we have to
bring it back.
Either bring it back, I believe, or Krista can agree to that here, and then we can make the adjustments. But it was negotiated. So.
Thank you,
Counsel.
Supervisor Topher. Yeah, I just wanted to echo that. We certainly could make that change. The board could vote on the contract as amended, but there are two parties to it, so we could just ask Ms. Von Lotta whether she is amenable to a 4-year term as opposed to a 3.
Ms. Von Lotta. It's on.
Pardon me. Should the board wish it to be a 4-year contract, I am completely amenable to that.
So you're a yes, Mr. Toffenelli?
Yes.
Ms. Callaway?
Yes.
Mr. Daramendi? Ms. Fullendorf? I would also be a yes to that. With that, I'd like to do it, but I'll give any other board member an opportunity to make a motion.
Sorry, if you don't mind, Supervisor Stopper, I think we need to have public comment.
I asked for it prior.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
No worries. You got to stay on top of me.
I would just ask for the motion to be to make the appointment and to approve the contract as amended.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Fullendorf, it looks like you're hitting your button.
Yes, I will move to approve the appointment and amend from 3 years to 4 years.
Thank you, Ms. Fullendorf. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Callaway. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes on 5-0 vote of the board. Thank you very much. I do want to say,
Thank you.
And if you have anything to say, Ms. Von Lotta, please do. And I just want to say that her mom's in the room, and I just want to thank this esteemed lady for lending us her daughter, and it's good to meet you.
I'd just like to say thank you so much, including to everyone who I've known who's helped me to get here. I truly look forward to serving you and the county. This is an incredible privilege, and I look forward to working incredibly hard with you, getting a lot done, and having fun in the process. So thank you again.
Thank you. Let's get to having fun.
Maybe budget hearings wasn't the day.
We'll move to item 23. It's an action item, information technology. Approve the attached quote for Coa Hills Consulting on the amount of $69,375 to conduct a business process review, BPR, of finance and HR payroll business processes by the end of 2021 in support of an upcoming upgrade of the One Solution Enterprise System. 2, authorize the county administrative officer or designee to execute agreement. Who wants to present this, Ms. Von Lotta? Is it Ms. Hawkins or?
I will be presenting on this from my team.
Stan, thank you.
Yes, okay. Good morning, board. Thank you for giving me the chance to present this. And by the way, congratulations to Krista on her appointment. So what we are talking about today, we will be doing an upgrade to our enterprise finance system in the new fiscal year. That's one solution. Vendor is Central Square. The last time that there was a major upgrade to this system was approximately 7 years ago. So we are several releases behind, and we will be getting caught up with a separate engagement with the vendor doing that upgrade for us. A great deal of changes have taken place with what the software provides the ability to do. This business process review will work with a vendor that we have an ongoing relationship with. They will come in, they will help us to review the core business processes for the business areas that primarily use this system. They will document how we are using the system today. With their help, we will document an end state in terms of where we want to get to. That will help us to move along with new features that the system allows, and even areas that the system has allowed that we have not taken advantage of. It is the feeling of a core group of senior business leaders that are working with this system that this business process review is really required for us to get the most benefit out of this important enterprise system. So this process will take place over the next few months. We are going to start it in the second half of June, working with one of the business areas. And then we will be working in tandem with this major upgrade that I was talking about of the enterprise system. So this will involve key business people from the auditor, from administration, from HR and payroll. Are there questions that we can address at this time for the board?
Board members. Mr. Toffenelli?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Dan, these upgrades to this system that we're talking about here, this is still not an integrated system with the system that payroll or the auditor's office uses. Is that correct? They're still two separate?
There are components of this that certainly are used by human resources, and payroll runs with this system as well. It is not the integrated human resources system that we would like to ultimately get to, and certainly the HR director can speak to some of the challenges that exist with that if you would like. But there are components that the Human Resources Department uses. It takes a great deal of redundant data entry and data management in the present state.
So do we have any type of plan going forward if we do this update? And I'm not sure, it says in here the length of time this update will last, but during a period of now going forward and updating this to the period it's served its use, can we work on integrating the two at some point between that time? I believe that what we will find is that when we are working on developing a long-term IT plan, which the plan is to do that this fall, that there will be identified needs to work on additional human resources systems that would be in addition to the finance system that human resources uses now. So we do not have a solution on that identified. When we do, we will be coming back to the board with a plan for integrating that into the one solution system, where we will either use components of one solution or we will have another tool that will systemically integrate and get away from the process that requires as much manual duplication as we have today. Thank you.
Further board comments or questions? Public comment?
I do not have any online public comment.
Any public comment from the room? With that, I'll bring it back to the board.
I'll move this item, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Toffenelli. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Garamendi. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Moves on a 5-0 vote of the board. Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you, board.
Item 24, resolution, integrated waste management. Adopt a resolution pursuant to Government Code 25830, establishing the annual solid waste parcel fee schedule for the 2021-22 fiscal year, and removing the exemption available to certain residences occupied on a part-time basis. Paul?
Good morning, Board Chair, Supervisor Stopper, and board members. Paul Ferriani with Integrated Waste, and I also have Jennifer Pratt with me. Hopefully we can answer any questions.
Any board questions? Public comment?
I have no online public comment on this item.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it back to the board. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move this item, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Toffanelli.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Fullendorf. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much, Mr. Ferriani. Passes on a 5-0 vote of the board. Yeah, wait. I want to make sure I read the right one. I don't want to go back to the last one. Number 25, action item, integrated waste management. Contingent upon adoption of the resolution in item 6123, introduce, waive full reading of, and 2, authorize summary publication of a repeal of Ordinance 2510, establishing a fee schedule and exemptions for solid waste systems. Mr. Ferriani. Ms. Pratt. Go ahead.
Jennifer Pratt, Department Analyst for Integrated Waste Management. Again, we're here just for any questions that you may have today regarding the rescind of the ordinance.
Any questions by the board members? Seems pretty straight. Oh, Mr. Toffanelli.
My question, I'm sorry, is for Sarah.
Yes.
Yeah, Sarah, since we're doing away with an ordinance and we're making it a resolution, then we don't need to post this in the paper and wait 30 days for it to become effective?
We do. It's a little weird, but as with most ordinances, yes, that is the process, even though all this ordinance is rescinding or repealing a prior ordinance. That will be the process.
Okay, thank you. Any further board questions? Public comment?
There is no online public comment.
Very good. I'll bring it back to the board.
I'll move this item and waive reading.
Thank you, Ms. Callaway. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Toffanelli. Thank you for moving it forward. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes on 5 over the board. Thank you, Ms. Pratt. Thank you, Mr. Ferriani.
Thank you.
With this, I'm going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break because I told some fire chiefs that we would not be hearing this till about 10 o'clock, and it's close enough to be able to take a 10-minute break. We're good? 1 second here. I just want to make sure I'm... Okay. Item 26, ordinance. County Council, introduce, waive reading, and adopt an urgency ordinance adding Chapter 8.09 to the Calaveras County Code, regulating fireworks, requires a 4/5 vote of the board. Ms. Edwards.
Good morning, board. I brought this ordinance forward at the request of 2 board members. It is an urgency ordinance, meaning that unlike most other ordinances, it would take effect immediately if adopted by 4/5 of the board. This would add a new chapter to county code. As stated in the staff report, currently, I believe 2 of our county fire districts ban all fireworks within their district boundaries, but there is no county-wide fireworks regulation, much less a ban. So this would, if adopted by 4/5 of the board, would ban the sale, use, and possession of all fireworks, including safe and sane fireworks, within the unincorporated area of the county. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
I'll start out that, I was one of the two board members that brought this forward. It's been a hard decision for me as someone that's grown up loving things that go boom and pop. It's something I've conversed with our fire chief for the last 2 years. We've, been hesitant about bringing it forward the last 2 years. As another supervisor once said to me in the past, sometimes it's better to be lucky than smart. Well, the last 2 years we've been lucky. Now it's time to get smart before we have to worry about being lucky. So that's the reason that I was one of the two supervisors that stepped up and brought this forward. We've had an extravagant amount of fires, especially in District 1 and District 5 with Calaveras consolidated. 35 fires, Chief?
Yes.
Yes. Well over 300 acres burned. We've been really lucky this year. So far, we have great men out in the field that have stepped up and knocked it down. All the fire chiefs, come together when there's a fire in one area. You guys all do a great job. It's just the consideration. We've had the Butte fire in the past. It's not a question of if it's going to happen again, it's when. And we've seen a significant rise in our foliage since the last fire. I don't want another Old Gulch fire. So this is the reason I'm proposing we go the smart route and instead of crossing our fingers and hoping to be lucky. It's celebration of our 4th. Is our part of our heritage. This has been incorporated into it, but it's not even a question of constitutionality. It's California's a tinderbox, and that's pretty much sums up the reason why I brought it forward. I don't really have questions for Ms. Edwards on it. I just wanted to give it a solid explanation of where I'm coming from. But I also would like to introduce a time frame to this urgency ordinance. That, part of the reason we brought this forward in the way we did instead of letting the fire districts do it is it came down to a matter of time and being able to apply it before the 4th of July. Just going through the process, there wasn't time for posting and going through the fire districts putting forward their own resolutions and everything and bringing it back before the board. It just wouldn't have happened in a timely manner. Thinking I've talked to my fire chief and, my proposition would be a 5-month urgency ordinance that would give them plenty of time to put forward anything they want in the future. But I think California is at a time where we go back to the smart. And fireworks is best served New Year's. 4th of July, we're in the heat. We can still have our fireworks over the lakes and everything according to this ordinance, and celebrate in that fashion. But it's, California's come to a time where we need to start thinking about having our fireworks during the winter when it's wet out. And, that's my line of thinking behind this. And I'll leave it at that. Any other further board member questions or suggestions? Okay, I'll bring it to public comment. Sophie? Lujan?
Good morning. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of the Rancho Calaveras Property Owners Association. My name is Sophie Lujan. I am the president. I am the proud president of the Rancho Calaveras Property Owners Association. Our organization, what we provide for our community is services for seniors. We serve lots of different exercise classes, water aerobics, and so on. We also have programs for families, children, especially teens, and small children. We also serve as a town hall for meetings, and it's a place where people come and they get information about what's happening in the county, what's happening in the community. We rent our facility for anyone that wants to come and give any kind of public notice, public opinion, or whatever. Let's see. We also have, we own ponds where families come out for outings and enjoy fishing, teach their children how to fish and how to enjoy nature walks, and so on. The position that we are taking is that we believe that this is premature, that we are very, very dependent on the funding, the revenue that our fireworks stand brings to our organization. This is a very short notice. As you have a budget, we also have a budget. And by banning this now, this really, really is going to hurt us. It might even put us out. We do not get funding from you, from the county. We don't get any kind of government funding from anyone. We are totally dependent on memberships. And because of COVID, our memberships have been down. Families don't have the money to join our organization and to pay our membership dues. So we feel that the timing of this, we understand the importance of it. We understand that we don't want to see anybody's house burned down, and I'm sure that when people come to our fireworks stand and they buy fireworks, they're not thinking, well, you know what, I'm going to burn down my neighbor's house. That's not the intent. The intent is to have a good time. The intent is for adults to be responsible and for them to be lighting the fireworks, and for not to put it in the hands of children or irresponsible people. Okay, that's our position. We also understand that the county also gets revenue. By banning it, it's not going to stop the fireworks. People are still going to go to other counties where they can buy them and bring them here. Stanislaus County, Amador, I know people from Stockton and San Joaquin County, they banned it. It was banned years ago, and people come and buy them here in our county and take them back. So that's not going to stop. Okay,
So,
and one more.
Sophie, I'm going to give you 15 more seconds. We're over your 3 minutes.
One more thing I just want to say. The fireworks that we sell, they're not boom and pop. They're not, okay? They don't explode. Those are the illegal ones that you're talking about, okay? We do not sell illegal. We sell legal fireworks. And we're asking for your support for our organization to survive. We're coming out of the pandemic. We have really, really struggled to keep our doors open. We're asking for your support, financial support, as far as us keeping our doors open for our community. So we just feel that this is premature. The timing is terrible. So, and something that I think that it can be handled. We can maybe, with the help of the fire department, have them come and do something in our parking lot where people can have a place where they can light their fireworks safely. So I just want you to take all of that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Further public comment? Okay. Well, we have one in the audience that looks like it's coming up, and then we'll work to online.
Hi, thanks for letting me be here. I'm Amanda Kelly. I'm actually with Copperopolis PTC. We are the funding for our whole entire school. We are a sister school to Mark Twain, but of course we are a smaller part of the school, so we have to fund everything for our school. Firework booth is our #1 fundraiser. Of course, of last year, because of COVID, we were not able to have any fundraisers. So the firework booth actually saved us in the long run. And we are a school that has 63% is low income. We pay for all our field trips. We pay for our school supplies. We pay for any upgrades that our school needs. So taking this away from us would be a big dramatic for us. And not only taking it away from us, but you guys are taking another thing away from our kids that our kids enjoy every year is seeing these fireworks. I feel like we've already taken so much because of COVID from our kids. Why should we take this away too? We actually even have our fire department that buys our Big Bang package, and they take it to the to the fire station, and they actually make our community come there and let off fireworks. So I don't see, again, why she said, why can't we have our fire departments join us? We have paperwork all the time that we hand out to people saying things. And again, same thing that like happened last year. You know, we had our Governor Newsom say no fireworks. He banned it in a lot of counties. And what happened on the news? You guys saw all the illegal fireworks that they got out of state, brought to California, and started blowing off. What do you think what's going to happen if you banned it from our counties that a lot of people know and love? Like you said, you know, you grew up with that. So now you're going to take it away from our kids' generation that they don't get to experience that anymore. And that, I'm really devastated on that part as well. But on the same sense, like I said, it's our only thing. We spend $40,000 a year. And again, it made us $20,000 this year, which was great. It only was half of what we got, of course, because of COVID. We scrambled for a lot of things. We've had it over 20 years, this booth, you know, and the only fireworks that have caused fires in our county was illegals. It was not safe and sanes. On top of it, you know, if you guys are going to ban fireworks, then it seems like we need to ban, you know, weed eaters and lawnmowers and cigarettes, you know, chains going on roads and stuff, because right now that is what's causing fires, not fireworks. Again, you know, I think we have responsible adults that are making these fireworks go off, not kids. Again, it is for the kids, yes, but the adults are the ones that are setting them off. So, like I said, it's going to be a death stage for us because we know that we're not going to be able to have any more fundraisers for our school. And again, we spend $40,000 for Copperopolis. And if we don't have this, you know, fundraiser, I don't know what we're going to do. And that's, again, you're taking another thing away from the kids because they're not going to have field trips. They're not going to have school supplies for their school. We have 63 families that are just not going to have, or 63% of families that will not be able to give what other kids could get at that school if we get this taken away from us. So I think we can work with our fire departments and maybe do something together with them. And two, we have a container.
I'm going to give you 15 more seconds. We're over the 3-minute.
Okay, we have another thing too, is we actually have already purchased everything for our firework booth. We've already spent $1,000 in a container that we will not be able to get reimbursed for it because we didn't know about this, and their deadline was 10 days prior. So, I mean, we're already out of money now that you guys are doing this so last minute. But I appreciate you guys' time, and I hope you guys make a good decision today.
Thank you, Kelly. We have another person from the audience.
Hello, my name is Brianna Robinson. I'm also a member of the Copperopolis Elementary PTC along with Amanda. So I just want you guys to realize what you'd be taking away from us if you took away the fireworks booth. Because last year we made $20,000. That was $20,000 that helped to do so much. We give teacher grants to the school, so when your teacher says, we need new chairs for our classroom because some are broken, we need new school supplies, they come to us and we give them the money because our schools don't have the money to afford certain things like that. The brand new playground that's at Copperopolis Elementary, money from the fireworks booth went to pay for that because we purchased that playground. The PTC did. So without that, I mean, we would not have been able to do that. It's one of our biggest fundraisers of the year. And not only that, it was the only fundraiser we were able to have last year. So without it, we would not have had money to give to the school. So when the teacher said we need new school supplies, we would have said, sorry, and that's more money out of the teachers' pockets. Why should they have to do that when we're here to help provide them with those things? And then also, like Amanda was saying, fireworks aren't going to go away. People are still going to go buy them somewhere else and bring them here. And not only that, people are going to go out of state and bring in the illegal ones. I understand not wanting the illegal ones. I don't want them either. What I want are safe and sane fireworks and for responsible adults to be using them. And we always have flyers at our booth that explain, these are for adults only, how to be safe, to always keep water around, things like that. And we give them out when we sell our fireworks so that people are aware of the rules. So we don't feel like also taking them away right now. When we had already planned on getting our booth, we already put money down. We already purchased the trailer that's going to need to bring the fireworks. So if we don't do it, we're already out a lot of money. So, I mean, because we weren't even made aware of this until I believe it was Friday or Saturday. Yeah, so we were already preparing. So I think this year, at least, if we could go forward allowing our booth to open and maybe bring this up next year, I can understand that. But I think so close this year to already the 4th is really going to hurt us. And without this, we don't know when we'll be able to do another fundraiser. We won't have the money for next school year. We had to scrape by this year. So I'm not sure what we would do if we didn't have this. And also, our kids have not been able to do much this year. This is one of the first fun things that they'll have to look forward to. My kids look forward to it every year. They love it, and we go to the fire department and we watch their display. Last year they weren't able to do it because of COVID restrictions. I mean, I think we were all affected by COVID.
I'm going to give you 15 more seconds. We're over the 3 minutes.
Okay. But like Amanda said, I think it's just taking something from our youth, and they have nothing to look forward to right now because of COVID. So, thank you, though.
Thank you, Brianna. Any further public comment from in the room? Mr. DeLorda.
Good morning. You've made a lot of changes since I was here last. Good to see you all.
Good to see your face.
I'm Mike DeLordo. I'm the fire chief in McCallum Hill. I want to share a couple of things with you. I'm not on the same page as some of my fellow fire chiefs, which is unfortunate, but we're there most of the rest of the time. I've been with the fire department in McCallum Hill for 54 years. In that time, I went to 2 fires that were caused by fireworks. Both were caused by illegal fireworks, not legal fireworks. One was way back in the 70s, it was firecrackers. The other one was people launching bottle rockets from Amador County down to the McCallum River, across the river. That one was bad. But safe and sane, I have not been to a fire with those. What I'd really like to talk about is the unforeseen consequences of such an action. Currently, most of the time, adults bring their little kids and explain to them what's going on, and they provide the safety and the training. 2 things will happen. Adults will still go get the fireworks, and they'll still have a good time with their kids, and they will show their kids that they can defy the law. That's not good. Okay? The other thing is you'll have people that also don't. They do abide by the law. They don't have fireworks with their kids. They don't train their kids. So the kids will get the fireworks anyway, and they will go out without training. That's going to be a problem. But then, not counting that, it's illegal. 911, somebody's using fireworks. Well, maybe we'll send the sheriff. Well, pretty soon the sheriff's going to go like, I got other important things to do. I mean, this is important, but whatever. So we'll just transfer it over to CAL FIRE, and they will call McElmy Hill, or they'll call somebody else or whatever. And we will go out without we don't have the ability to cite. We don't want the ability to cite. So you're going to be taking up resources. All these unintended consequences of something that sounds good is up to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Delorto. Mr. Dickinson.
Good morning. Rich Dickinson, Fire Chief, Calaveras Consolidated. I'm going to stand before you and thank you for being proactive instead of reactive. I don't think I have to tell any of you. Just follow our Facebook and watch what we've been up against this year. I've reached out to you. I've reached out to the Rotary a couple of years ago. As you know, I came from the Bay Area, and way back when, years ago, we stopped fireworks, safe and sane. And I'll fight everybody. Putting an incendiary device in people's hands. I've moved up here 27 years ago. I have 2 kids, 6 grandkids, and it's very difficult being a leader, being a fire chief. But my mission statement says protect lives and property. That's my mission. It's not about charity. I have charity. We hurt more than anybody in the county for my fire district, who basically, we have volunteers that make absolutely nothing. They work a 24-hour period, probably make about $1 an hour, but we go out, our fuel costs are off the charts. We constantly responding on vehicle accidents, with car fires, with vegetation, whether it be weed trimmers, whatever. But the gut in my stomach for all of you in this community, for people in a incendiary device, when I call it grass and weeds, right now, as you know, it's drier than it's ever been for us. Whether you want to call it global warming, whatever you want to call it, but we are having unprecedented fires, like I said, over 35, and of those 35 fires, about 29 to 30 of them are from human cause. So for me, when I have people coming and buying fireworks, I have to think about there's the vocal minority and the silent majority. And at the end of the day, I have to make some decisions that can be very difficult. But I caution all of you, the world has changed. And all it takes is someone, and I hate it when this comes from me and it comes to my fire marshal, and it's already been signed, sealed, delivered to allow fireworks in our community. But, and it's if, it's not when, or it will be when, not if, but when it does happen, the attorneys, they're coming after me personally, they're coming after my family, they're coming after our fire board, because who allowed this? That's the hard part you have to understand. Who allowed this fireworks who allowed them to have incendiary devices? Because choices have consequences. So at the end of the day, when our community, because a weed eater, a month ago, a horse on Snyder Ranch, the horseshoe of the horse sparked on the rocks and started a fire. So we're normally at this time of the year kind of green going to brown, but because of the drought, what's going on, it's been unprecedented what's going on. And when we show up, I try, you've heard me say this for 3.5 years, I try with my guys to keep the fire, try to get an initial attack to keep that thing be able to 2 to 3 acres before it starts to become what I'm going to call a large event on initial attack, and CAL FIRE has to bring all the resources in with aircraft to try to get control of this. You've seen the El Campo fire. You've seen Lancaster Pacheco. You've seen it multiple over and over again, and we are surprised with the amount of fire activity we're happening. and amount of acreage that it's taken. So,
Mr. Dickinson, I'm going to give you 15 more seconds.
okay, so what I'm promoting is I understand everybody how they feel. All I'm asking is for Phantom Fireworks and TNT, have a conversation with me, with the groups, and just change your date. Change your date to December, New Year's Eve. It's a great time. Everything's green. I don't have to have that stomach acid in my stomach of worried on a 100-degree day that we're going to have a fire. And I'm willing to work and just basically postpone the charity and do it in December, for fireworks. That's what I'm looking for. Not trying to ban it permanently, but at least just do a research. And I'm sorry, but California, we got to change the way we do business right now. I'm sorry. My job is this: mission statement: protect lives and property, not charity. That's my mission. And I don't want to stand in front of KCR3 Channel 3 and try to explain why 75 homes burned because of safe and sane fireworks. Chief, why did you allow them? And here comes the attorneys, and you've seen what they've done to PG&E. So, anyways, that's my 2 cents. Willing to help everybody out. Just change your dates.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Mike Johnson with Evans Pass Fire District. I brought this piece of paper up here, and it has absolutely nothing to do with our topic, so that's interesting. But we've had the fireworks ban up at Evans Pass as part of our fire ordinance for a long time, and I just kind of thought I would step up and just give you a little bit of overview of what that means and how it's worked in our area. It's been relatively unique that we are the area in Calaveras County that does not allow what you guys are talking about today. We've worked closely with the county over the years to provide citations if need be. It's only a couple a year at most. That is a notice to appear in court. We work with the court systems for a couple of dates, and then people go there, and it's usually a misdemeanor or something along those lines. We feel like it's worked rather well. We put signs up. We tell people, hey, they're not allowed here. We feel as if one fire prevented from any source is part of our mission to try to do that. It's extra dry this year. I understand why you would choose this year to put this into play. I also understand it's not a very popular thing to do for a lot of fundraising as well. Beyond that, I think that if you look at, Tuolumne County doesn't allow any. I don't believe Mariposa allows any. Amador doesn't allow any except for in the incorporated areas that have decided differently, which would be similar to City of Angels Camp would do something like that maybe. El Dorado County doesn't allow any, and I think we're one of those counties in that contiguous body of the Mother Lode area that you may want to consider following suit. It's really up to you. We have allowed to do a permitted couple of events with a safe and sane display with a couple of the HOAs. And really, we kind of have allowed that and gone out there and had a presence. Some of them were on a dock on a lake or something along those lines. So maybe there's some options, and I think Chief Dickinson makes a really good point that, hey, the New Year's Eve or something like that could be an opportunity to open those fundraising things back up. And in any case, I don't know if there's any questions about our program or effects positively or negatively it may have had on the community.
I do have one question, if you don't mind. Something I heard down from the Bay Area, that when they ban safe and sane, there's a noticeable draw in illegal fireworks at the same time. Have you noticed the same thing?
Really, the only thing that we see are people that have vacationed or come up to our area that have driven through areas where they are allowed, and I don't fault them for that. They stop at a fireworks stand, they put them in the car, they claim they don't see any of the amber signs over the highway coming up the hill, and then they're at the vacation home, second home, Airbnb, VRBO, whatever, and we actually go there and educate them. And essentially the way it works is if you pass the attitude test and our fire trucks show up and they say, oh my gosh, I had no idea, we put them out, they put them out in front of us, typically it's just an educational piece at that point and it's done. I have not seen an illegal type of firework activity in our area. I've just seen the safe and sane ones that have come into our area probably as they've been traveling up the hill. Just to add on to that, our rural communities have seen, at least in our area in District 3, have seen such an influx of people coming out to visit, recreate, since the COVID-19 pandemic. So with more people comes the more possibility of something happening. We've just seen an influx of visitors and people coming up in our area. So I'm happy that we have something in place to help us mitigate the increased, opportunity that human-caused anything brings to our area.
Thank you. Any other board questions? Thank you.
I do have one.
Sorry, Mr. Toffenelli.
How long has it been in place, your ban?
I know that the current one says it's 2012, and I think it predates that. I believe. Maria, would you Supervisor Callaway? Been
over 20 years.
Probably 20 years now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the audience? We'll do the online ones.
You can go ahead and make your online comment now.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Hi, thank you. My name is Marisa, and I recently attended a Neighborhood Watch meeting where we did have speakers on the fire department present, and it was acknowledged that the fireworks that are launched are the ones that typically cause the problems. And I completely agree that when families use their Safe and Sane fireworks, they are cautious. They are very cautious, and it's their property that they're protecting. A question that I have for you is, would there be a way that we could only allow Safe and Sane fireworks in certain areas of the county, maybe around the lakesides, or in streets, or in parking lots? And I really do agree with a lot of the comments that it is way past the time where this should have been decided upon. It is really hurting the nonprofit organizations right now, and I'm also part of the RCPOA, and it would be just a horrible blow to us. We would lose. Well, last year we made enough money to keep us afloat. We could plan other fundraisers for next year, but the blow that this impact takes on us is horrible. And I am concerned about our environment and the fire situation. Also, I would be willing to volunteer to monitor designated areas. If there's a designated area for fireworks, I'd be happy to sit there with fire extinguishers, hoses, and just make a day out of being careful with the fireworks. Make a night of it. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marissa. Any further comments?
There are no further online comments, no.
I'll bring it back to the board. Ms. Callaway?
This subject has come up innumerable times over the last 25 years, plus or minus. And I've always been a proponent of, if an area wants to outlaw fireworks, then they outlaw it in their respective areas, like Central Fire and its past fire has. And as passionate as Chief Dickerson is, and I understand that, his fire district has had the opportunity to outlaw fireworks within that respective district. So on one hand, I'm very sympathetic and I agree that we need to do something. On the other hand, we've talked about this for years and the fire districts have not stepped up to do it. But I think there's opportunities here. And I was just thinking of them as the school district talked. As Chief Johnson said, he has given authority, and this ordinance allows it to happen, that the chief for the respective fire district can set up an agreement with Copper School or an HOA to do it within their respective areas. So that's something that maybe Copper could work out with the chief for the Copper Fire District. Is there a place that you could do it in Copper on the school parking lot? Or you buy forward, you go to your booth, you buy whatever sparkles or Safe and Sane, and they're donated to the Copper Fire District, and the Copper Fire District does the action for that respective kid or family. So, to me, there's options out there. The ordinance allows for options for that work for a respective fire district. So, I think that could be a start instead of saying it's a total ban. So there could be designated areas that it would be agreed to. So as much as I had a problem with wanting to approve this ordinance, because fireworks are sure fun, and being a kid and holding a sparkle in your hand, it doesn't get any better than that. So I will support this. I will also support the chair's recommendation that there be a 5-month cap on this ordinance.
Thank you, Ms. Calloway. I do want to say thank you for bringing up those points. Mr. Dickinson and I did actually talk about this in depth. There is the opportunities provided in this ordinance. I think Mr. Toffenelli actually made the suggestion to put it into the ordinance that would allow for opportunities for respective fire districts to do just what you talked about. So, working with your respective fire chiefs would give you the opportunity to possibly work out a safe area to do these type of things. Mr. Toffenelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I am the second supervisor that asked to bring this forward, and I want to thank Sarah for working on it as diligently and as fast as she got it together. And there is allowances in here. I talked with my fire chief is Rich and Calco, and putting some things forward. Somebody's phone?
Yeah, somebody's phone.
So we could work out so there's some leeway for the fire chiefs to be able to do something which has been talked about here. It also gives them leeway for any fireworks displays that are public displays, like the boosters put on over Hogan Dam, although it's not going to happen this year. And during the course of this ordinance, I really want to put forward that this ordinance it has a limited time on it, and it's to get through the fire season. One of the main reasons that I was in favor of bringing this forward and in favor of this ordinance is just the Capo fire. Right at the first part of May, we weren't even in fire season yet. Fire season doesn't start till June. We're just starting normally in a normal year, the fire season. Since that time, the number of fires in just District 5 and District 1 exploded. And they were constantly, it seemed like every other day, they're out putting out fires. And Ben and I are in very close contact with our fire chiefs, so we know when they're at a fire, when they're putting a fire out, how big it was. You know, if we want to know what equipment they had to use. That's before the fire season has even started. We're already there. And the extreme conditions that we're facing, even because of the drought and even the water restrictions we're facing, per the governor and the legislature going forward this year, it puts complete restrictions on what the fire departments have to face going forward into this year. And this won't stop. Normally, November 1st is the end. I think last year it went past November 1st. We were in December before the fire season actually ended. We have no idea this year what's going to happen. But the suggestion that we could probably do it on December 31st, New Year's Eve, we can work with the fire departments on that. This ordinance will be over by then. This is not a permanent ordinance. This is not something that's going to be going forward unless the board decides to at a later date when it comes to an end to go forward on it. But it's just for this year because of the extreme conditions that we are facing here in Calaveras County and California itself. So that's why I was in favor of bringing this forward. Ben and I had spoke to Rich numerous times going back to April, first part of April when the conditions really started turning dry at that time. So I'm in favor of this ordinance, and I'm in favor it does give fire chiefs the ability to make decisions to work out some of the things that Marita was talking about and other public displays.
And if I may, Supervisor Tofinelli and board, I can, to address that desire of the board or a majority of the board to have it expire within or in approximately 5 months, what I can do is just write into the first subsection of this ordinance that it's of limited duration and shall automatically expire on November 30 or whatever date the board chooses without further action by the board.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. We all.
I got something to say. My name's Adrian. You guys are all elected officials. If you end up closing down these nonprofits, you guys will all be voted out of office. I don't give a fuck. Fuck you. I'm gonna say something to you. 5 months, whatever it is.
You're out of line.
Whenever that thing expires,
you had your opportunity
they won't
for
be here no
public
more.
comment.
Fuck you too. Okay.
Not even halfway once. Any further? Ms. Palmer?
Hi. So I'm going to be a little repetitive, so bear with me. I'm going to acknowledge what Supervisor Stopper said earlier, stating that our environment is changing, and we do need to work to be smarter and evolve with the current climate. And some of my comments will echo what Marita, Supervisor Callaway mentioned. While I can support the emergency ordinance this year due to all of the points that have been made by the fire chiefs and their recommendation for this ordinance, and working with the respective supervisors on this, I do want to point out that within the ordinance, to the community members that have concerns, that if you look at the section 8.09.060A, it will allow public fireworks display to work with their respective fire chiefs and their districts to provide the respective experiences. I have, over the last couple days, I know I have not spoken with you guys directly. I have reached out with school board members, school leadership, school board members, a few fire board members, and community leaders and members, and talked about their concerns of exactly what you have expressed. Parents want to share the experience that we all grew up having. I cherish those memories with my parents and my grandparents. But at the same time, I have to recognize that we've got to provide an avenue for some type of enforcement. With the ordinance going back, I would request that it be brought back to provide clear expectations of what a safe and sane area will be to allow these community fundraisers to happen. And whether that be at the school locations, the firehouse itself, I think that we need to acknowledge and recognize that. I know that your mother home is up in the Angels Camp, and I would suggest and encourage to work with the Mark Twain School Board and the city fire chief to find a reasonable solution if Copper Fire is unable to work with you. I think that there are options out there, and I would encourage this conversation to be had. But again, back to what the other supervisors have mentioned, I think we need to lead, and I think also that, I know that the fire chiefs also need to work with their respective districts to ensure that they communicate, because the communication coming directly, when you're pushing an avenue like this, I shouldn't be the last to be heard about it. And I expect the same with them communicating to their constituents and their respective districts to ensure that they are told ahead of time. It shouldn't be today that they've been told about it. So, thank you.
Mr. Garamendi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In 4.5 years, it was the first one that flipped us the bird, so that's always something new under the sun in Calaveras. But not the first one to tell us where to go on the way out. My question is, City of Angels, is the City of Angels, where are they, where's Angels Camp with their ordinance? Are they going to be the donut hole here? Chief?
So in the City of Angels, John Warbaugh, Fire Chief, City of Angels Camp, also Altaville Melonious Fire District. And we're sort of on the holding pattern. This is a hot topic for us that we've been discussing as well. And we were going to bring some stuff up to the city recently based on Rich's talking with you guys about a single ordinance. And then we found out that the county was potentially taking a position. So we're sort of waiting to see that, and that'd be the top priority for me in the morning, to meet with the city administrator and have some discussions about that. I don't know how that's going to play out at this point. It'd be premature to make a statement on that, but I'll be talking to the city administrator and the electeds probably first thing in the morning to see how we want to pursue that. I do want to say that I agree with Chief Dickinson. Again, we're thinking about safety, public safety here of life and property, and the key in the timeline right now is just the weather and the conditions out there. And I would hope maybe we can work with different fundraisers to maybe do it on New Year's Eve, and maybe that's the new normal where they can do those fundraisers then. I can tell you, as the chief of the two districts, I'd be willing to work with, like we were talking about, maybe have areas of isolation where this is the place where we can set those up and do that there, and have fire trucks there on standby. And we do that in the city at Bret Harte High School. That's our big thing. We have hundreds, thousands, sometimes people show up there. We normally have 2 fire trucks out there. And it works out great for the community because everybody gets to see everybody's display. So it isn't, so it's sort of nice. So more to come, though, for the city. I probably won't know more until tomorrow.
Thank you. My concern is obvious.
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't do much good if everybody could just go to Angels Camp and buy it on the other side.
Yeah, I understand that, and for me, again, it would be premature for me to make any statements not having formal communication with the city manager or the electeds on the topic yet.
Okay, well, I'm going to hope that we're not getting Marita?
Chief, I have a question. When you do it at Bret Harte,
yes, ma'am.
Can individual families do it themselves?
Yeah, we basically it's set up. It's back there by the baseball field. It's a huge parking lot. Everybody comes in. People are checked in. They go through. We have, But people can set up all over the place, and it isn't like just we light them off for them. They can do their own stuff, and we make sure people are staggered out in a safe area and stuff like that. It's actually normally a really nice event.
I've seen the same thing in McCalmy Hill. Mr. DeLordo's brought in to Main Street, had fire officials there in the past, and I just providing a safe place for people to do it, and so I appreciate the input.
I just want to be clear that I'd be very disappointed if all the stands are centrally located in the City of Angels tomorrow morning. That would be I would consider that a betrayal. So hopefully that will not happen. One of the things I have problems with this, I'm sharp enough in math that I can count to 4, but I do have some problems I feel like I need to address. One is our fire districts are responsible for fire protection for our communities. We give them that authority. I've got one district of the 3 that I represent that is banned it. I got one that not so much and one that's against this. I would really like to see, before we bring forward formal ordinance, our fire districts go through this process and make this commitment too. In many ways, we're jumping ahead of our fire districts who should be voting on this. And then coming to us and saying, hey, we've got the county area sheep ranch, which is the only county responsibility that we have, has all the fire pits. Then we'd plug that hole and we'd be universal. So I would hope that chiefs will go back to their respective districts and ask them to partner with us so that we're not the only bad guys sitting up here. I agree with my chief from Oak Hill regarding access to fireworks. If we ban something, then only bad guys do it. And we don't teach our kids respect and responsibility for the fireworks. But I'm also the guy who represents where the Butte Fire burned through, so I'm very sensitive to this. I have grave concerns about enforcement. We don't have enough volunteer firefighters to start, let alone going door to door and busting everybody. And I know our sheriff's deputies don't want to be in that business either. So when this comes back, I would like to have that clarified on who's going to be in charge of this. And then where's the amnesty box for guys like us, guys like me who've gotten plenty of fireworks stashed away to put away. And we do our fireworks on New Year's, but that's just how we roll about them. So thank you for talking about the City of Angels. I hope that when this comes back, our fire districts will be more involved. And that's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Toffanelli.
To Jack's statements, Sarah, you said you could write this where it ends at a certain date and it won't come back. Does it need to come back to this because it just ends?
Right, so the board could adopt this today by a 4/5 vote. It would go into effect immediately. While you've been talking, I wrote in an expiration. I wrote in that the purpose and intent is to protect the public during the 2021 fire season, and that this urgency ordinance is of limited duration and shall automatically expire at the end of November. That could still be adopted by the board today. Alternatively, or if there are larger scale changes, I could bring this back at a subsequent board meeting, but yes, it can be adopted as an urgency ordinance today. If the board at any point intends to put a more permanent ordinance into place, that would obviously come at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Ms. Callaway.
I heard what Supervisor Garamendi said, and that's what I said. But I think what this does, because it isn't going to happen with all the districts or before the 4th, that we approve it for this year, for the 5 months, as Supervisor Stopper recommended, and let the fire districts work on it. Because if we're going to wait for them to work on it, then they have to call special meetings. And to me, the time is short, that this is a one-time pass for all of us, and then we can discuss it if it comes back next year.
I understand. I think that'd be a good discussion to have. I will note that when we brought this up, 2 or 3 years ago, Carrie, I can't remember, all the fire chiefs told us they didn't want to ban, and that was universal. So obviously times are changing.
Ms. Fulmer.
I just want to clarify too, I don't want to be back in this position next year. So if we're going to do this, I mean, year after year emergency ordinances with this type of a timeline, that's not reasonable. So if we're going to go through this, I expect that there's going to be support and partnership from the fire district to continue this, because I don't want to see the audience again on this topic.
Yes, and just to be clear, Supervisor Fullendorf, in order to pass an urgency ordinance, the board has to make findings that it's necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, and safety, and so that this is, this ordinance incorporates findings that, as many folks have spoken to this morning, that this fire season, unfortunately, we are anticipating to be very bad. We've already seen fires. So this is drafted to be particular to this fire season, and as you say, if the board chooses to put a more permanent ordinance into place, that obviously would look different.
Mr. Toffanelli.
No, just listening to the comments and understanding a uniform front from the fire agencies and how we come to some sort of a agreement through resolutions of individual boards or what have you. We'll start working on that as early as tomorrow, at least the discussion. So I'd say it's very reasonable by the end of the moratorium, if approved, that we could come back to you with something official from everybody and give you a recommendation. Obviously, as of today, some are all in on one side or all in on the other. So it'll take a lot of discussion, but we'll get working on that. Thank you.
The respective fire districts do have an opportunity to make their decisions in their areas and bring them to the board. Also, the JPA does have the ability to come together with everybody throughout the county. So I think there's multiple avenues. This beyond the two substandard comments that were voiced, a lot of people that are opposed to this, you're talking to my heart. This is a very hard decision. It's been a very hard decision coming forward with this. It's something we all grew up with. And I do want to thank Sophie, Lujan, and Marissa for speaking up for Rancho Calaveras and everything that they do. Throughout COVID and everything else, everyone's had a very hard time in raising money. And I know this is, just going to hit farther below the belt and take away. But I have to take all points in considerations, and protection of the people within my district or throughout the county is one of the things I have to take first and foremost. Money can always be a hardship, but when we lose 500 plus homes in one fire, it's just devastating. And that's the juggle I have, and again, I'm going to say I'm going to be smart this time before I'm going to get lucky. So, first steps to making it. So I'll entertain a motion by the board.
Sarah, the motion has to be made with the 5-month.
Yeah, so
deadline.
what I did, and I'm probably not, maybe I can share my screen. Let's say if I can share my screen here. I can. So what I did, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. So what I did is, as you'll see in red, I just added the red text. So at the beginning it says the urgency ordinances of limited duration shall automatically expire. I said November 30, that's 5 months through the end of the 5th month from now, without further action, but I can change that, without further action by the board. I added that it's the purpose is to protect the public during the 2021 fire season. And then down at the end, I just reiterated, you'll see the red text again, that the ordinance shall expire automatically without further action of the board on November 30, 2021.
Mr. Chair, I will move this item with the changes that were made by Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Toffenelli. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Callaway. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes on a 5-0 vote of the board? Or, I didn't hear you.
I got budget coming up after this, so I'm going to go with you guys. Yes.
Okay. 5-0 vote of the board. Thank you. Again, this isn't lightly. I need a break. 5 minutes. We'll be reconvening. Let's get to the right spot here. Thank you, Robin. We're on item 27, action item, Administrative Office. Conduct the fiscal year 2021-22 recommended budget hearings. Receive presentations on the recommended budget from the CAO and various department heads, and provide the CAO with direction for any requested changes to the recommended budget. Ms. Von Lotta. CAO Von Lotta.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, good morning. Krista Von Lotta, CAO. Thank you. So this morning, I bring to you the recommended budget for fiscal year 2021, 2020, 2021. Sorry, pardon me. Let me start over. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And we will go from there with the PowerPoint. Great. Okay, no worries. Starting over, I bring to you the fiscal year 2021-2022 recommended budget. So this budget will first discuss the overall budget message, the budget landscape, influences on the budget, the revenue snapshot for the general fund, budget requests, personnel requests, our structural deficit, and the recommendations for your board to consider. First, to just discuss the overall budget message, somewhat similar to what we saw last year, although we'll get to some major departures later in the presentation. If you'll recall, last year we recommended a 5.3% reduction from the general fund contribution at the point of recommended budget. That move was made in order to close the gap between projected revenues and projected expenditures. We have included that in this year's budget. At this time, just to be very clear, that number is the same number that was included in most general fund budget units last year, not based on this current year's budget. So it is that same number that you would have seen in last year's budget at this time. The budget is overall balanced. Reserves are just over the policy level of 8.2%. Contingencies are at the policy level of 8.2%. The general fund reserve is at about $4.2 million. Revenue assumptions are generally conservative, but we're going to talk more about that. Generally speaking, to stay the course, as we did last year, serious recommendation that we have a study session in August, either after the books are closed or when we're close enough to knowing what those ending fund balances are going to look like, that we can have a conversation in anticipation of recommended budget, or final budget rather. And adjustments to be made in the adopted budget in September. Again, we'll speak about this later, but the American Rescue Plan is, and those funds are still under evaluation by administration. That is, again, a conversation that we'll be having with you over the course of the next of July and August, so that we can incorporate board direction after recommendations have been made to your board with respect to that funding. So, budget landscape, CARES Act funding. CARES Act funding was pivotal in our ability to get the budget over the finish line at this past fiscal year. Those funds have been mainly either used in this current year budget or remain in contingency. They are part of what is now our fund balance projection as of June 30th, 2021. Borrowing from special revenue funds. If you'll recall, we have been borrowing REM funds in order to complete the 2017 and 2019 disaster projects. Those loans are still in place. They are also budgeted for this current fiscal year. We anticipate all projects, I believe, I will let Public Works correct me if I'm wrong, but anticipate all of those projects being completed in this current fiscal year such that we can budget all reimbursements next fiscal year, if not before. Teeter transfer to balance. As you know, we've made a teeter transfer to balance for the prior two budget cycles. We are also including one to balance the books this year. As for the past or the year prior, we do not anticipate making any teeter transfer to actually close this fiscal year end. But it is a mechanism by which we use borrowing in order to close the gap between our projected revenues and projected expenditures. The American Rescue Plan Act, as I just spoke to, we're still working through the guidance. The guidance has been not as clear, I suppose I would say, in terms of appropriate uses for our county. There will be plenty, I believe, but in order to make the recommendations to your board, we are going to go through and audit all revenues, not just our general fund revenues and our general revenues budget unit, but other revenues that are that were potentially affected by COVID, and in order to get a better picture of where we might be able to backfill for lost revenue, do more research, and then bring recommendations to a future board meeting in anticipation of when we put the final budget together for September. That funding, as you I'm sure know, is approximately $8.9 million. There will be appropriate uses. One of them could be to put some of those funds into essentially a savings account to see whether we experience revenue shortfalls between now, during the period of the funding is available, so between now and December of 2024. Pardon me. So what does the budget include? Salary savings of approximately $2.2 million. This is a general reduction, not intended to be a reduction in salaries and benefits, and this is the rebudget of the 5.3% cut that we were forced to make last year at this time in order to close the gap. Projected fund balance used to balance approximately $7 million. That's a high number, and that's very positive. We worked with the auditor controller in order to arrive at that fund balance projection. We do feel it's conservative, although until the books close in August, we won't know for sure what our fund balance actually will be. A teeter transfer to balance of approximately $3.9 million, contingencies at approximately just over $1.5 million, and the reserve again at 4.2. So the fiscal year projection. This is our general fund balance projection as of June 30th of this year. As I believe you understand, this is merely a projection at this point. It's in August when the books are closed that we'll actually have, as of June 30th, that fund balance number. So the work that we've done at this point in order to arrive at that projection brings us to $7 million. That is up approximately $3 million from 2021. That said, that's essentially CARES Act funding. That's where we see that funding. Remains to be seen whether we'll be able to apply the American Rescue Plan funds to the general fund. So that is premature, and we should not anticipate that to be the case at this point. The prior fiscal year, the fund balance was down $3.2 million over the prior year. The prior year, the fund balance was down $3.3 million over the prior year. So we're running at essentially a $3.3 million fund balance deficit, or a deficit year over year, with the exception of this past year. And again, I note CARES Act funding, which is clearly one-time funding that we should not expect on a year-over-year basis. General revenues overall are above the reduced projections that we made this time last year. We made very conservative revenue assumptions. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Salary savings are projected to be approximately $3 million at the end of the fiscal year. That number is included in the $7 million fund balance projection. What's interesting to note there is, despite the fact that the 5.3% cut, albeit not intended to be used as to cut salaries, but rather to be spread across expense line items as department heads see fit. Even with that, we are still going to be closing with approximately $3 million. So we know that we have extra funds tied up in salaries and benefits, and part of that is turnover, but another part of that is that we make very conservative assumptions with respect to how we budget for our positions, specifically our vacant positions. So in terms of the forecasting policy, we generally construe one of two, and in this case I'll suggest a hybrid model, but the first basic approach that I'll discuss is a conservative approach. This is where all revenues, or revenues generally, are budgeted to be low, with expenditures budgeted to be high. The good news in this respect with this approach is that it reduces likelihood of shortfall. The risk is that it's harder to balance and you see larger swings. I think that since we have taken a conservative approach in recent years, that is one reason why we have the gap that we regularly talk about between our projected revenues and projected expenses. On the alternative, we've got the idea of budgeting the revenues and expenses as accurately as possible. The good news there is that it's typically easier to balance, but then if you make an incorrect assumption, there's much more exposure and the potential for, especially at this point, for things to change quickly and end up at a bad position, whether it's at final budget or at the mid-year budget or somewhere else along the line. This budget is generally conservative, although particularly as it relates to our sales tax, TOT, and Prop 172, where we didn't see the types of decreases in revenue that we were concerned about at this point last year. While still conservative, we have adjusted those assumptions to be more consistent with what we think we can expect at this point. So unknown factors, COVID-19 remains to be an unknown. Whether there's going to be a potential economic downturn, whether we're experiencing a bubble, economically, remains to be seen. As you know, we are entering negotiations with all bargaining units with contracts expiring on September 30th of this year. So we can anticipate potentially incurring additional MOU increases further to that bargaining. I've already touched on the American Rescue Plan Act, ongoing local business impacts, unemployment, as we know, CalPERS unfunded liability, IHSS increases. I'll actually scratch from this for now. After conferring with Health and Human Services, we believe that at least at this point, the county is in a good position moving forward in that respect. And then, of course, other unknowns. So to take a step back and remind ourselves what we did at this point last year and what the recommendations were at the onset of COVID with many unknowns at that point, we reduced the projection for sales and use taxes by 25% from what the prior fiscal year budget was. So not actuals, but budget. And when we did that, the general fund took an $825,000 hit. In a year where, just for calibration's sake, in a year where we were expecting the economy to continue to expand and revenues to go up, we would look at prior year actuals if they were greater than prior year budget, and then have a conversation. And when I say we, I mean myself, the auditor's office. We have guidance that we receive in this regard, et cetera. Last year being such a question mark, we were extremely conservative. Prop 172, typically tracking sales and use taxes, we made the same reduction, which again was another $427,000 reduction to the general fund and almost $50,000 to fire districts. Now, as a reminder, we did adjust Prop 172 at mid-year. There is a mandate that those funds are spent in a certain way, so there has been a reset for Prop 72. With respect to the TOT, we made a drastic reduction of 50% due to the concerns over lockdowns and not being able to travel whatsoever for TOT. And again, that reduction was made after the prior year budget as opposed to actuals. In this particular case, those were essentially the same. So what that meant overall was a $750,000 reduction, approximately half of which hit the general fund and the other half of which hit the Calaveras Visitors Bureau and Fire. And just as a reminder, when I talk about a general fund reduction as it relates to the TOT, what I mean is that that TOT funding backfills for the general fund is the roads department maintenance of effort and the sheriff's department general fund contribution that would otherwise be made. And then certain other revenues were reduced in some cases by a third. Not property tax, not vehicle license fees, or things like the tobacco settlement or franchise fee that we know to be relatively static, but other things like interest, for example. So what are we increasing this year, particularly as it relates to those reductions that were made last year? Measure C and G, approximately $1.8 million increase. So of that figure, approximately 2.7 of the total 3.2 is as a result of commercial grows, and the dispensary projected revenue is approximately $500,000. So total $1.8 million over what was budgeted for excise tax last year. Sales and use taxes similarly went up. We're projecting by $1.4 million for a total of 3.6. I believe that to be conservative, as does the auditor. Prop 172 up by approximately $700,000. And just so you understand how we came to that projection, those were as of March 31st, 2021 actuals. And the TOT also up by $900,000, which would end up with a $410,000 contribution to the CVB, to fire districts, to roads, and to the Sheriff's Department, which is substantially more than was budgeted this past year. So what's interesting about that particular number is that given that it's conservative, and we can talk more about this later in the presentation, but should the board wish to remain with the 25, 25, 25, 25 allocation that the TOT has been subject to since it was increased from 6% to 12%, then this figure would still be consistent with increasing, or to the extent that the idea of wanting to do a look back were what the board wanted, the approach that the board would like to take. This would be consistent with that. This number could be adjusted presumably up at final budget after the fiscal year and books are closed, and we know what the actual number is for fiscal year 2021. That's a board policy decision to be made. However, that would be consistent with how we budget across the general fund, for example, where we know that if we're thinking we're going to have a fund balance of $7 million, but it turns out we've got a fund balance of $5 million, that $2 million has to come from somewhere. Likewise, if we think we've got a fund balance of $7 million, but we've got a fund balance of $9 million in August, now we have $2 million more dollars. Again, a policy level decision for the board, just throwing it out there as food for thought. So this is the overall four-year general fund trend. Sorry, there we go. Having trouble with my mouse. Pardon me. Okay, so in terms of taxes, this is where you see that increase. And it's not just the taxes we just discussed. Property taxes also are projected to increase, not as dramatically. Also, you see the increase here for licenses, permits, and franchise fees. This largely is related to fee studies that have been done. Of note, the building department fee study. Revenue from use of money or property. Here's where you see our adjustments for what we anticipate will be the interest on our general fund. So in terms of intergovernmental revenues, state and federal, here's where we see that we have not budgeted this year anything in terms of revenue for our disaster budgets as it relates to the, I shouldn't say anything, but any additional general fund dollars for disaster budgets. So that includes the Butte fire, et cetera. Some funds have been budgeted in the roads disaster budgets, but not minor by comparison with the $2 million over that we budgeted last fiscal year for Butte, if you'll recall. And then operating transfers in is primarily comprised of not transferring in the $3.9 million of CARES Act funding that had been residing in a special revenue fund, as well as no transfers in budgeted for the fire JPA. If you'll recall that we had included in the adopted budget last year. And the teeter transfer to balance is less this year than it was last year. And after taking account of those things, you're basically status quo. On the all-around, again, I note the difference between this number and this number, very close to the CARES Act funding that we absorbed into the general fund last year, or that we, revenue that we had last year. So taxes, of course, are our largest revenue source. Operating transfers, and this number has gone up consistently over the years for a variety of reasons. Some of, one of them is the teeter transfer to balance. Another is our PG&E settlement funds that flow through general fund budgets, CARES Act funding, etc. That's where we see those. Were there any questions there?
I have a question. Contributions from other governments? Who are these other governments?
I confess I would have to check on that particular 28,200, but historically these are things like, I think it was year before last, or last year there was 47,000 for an MOU that our Sheriff's Department had with the City of Angels Camp. There have been incidents where code compliance will actually do work for other entities. So that's where that, and I would have to confirm where that particular 28,000 resides.
Krista, on a small increase in property taxes, considering what's happening in the real estate market, I'm not sure what's happened the last tax collection. Is that?
So,
what is small? I'm not sure what small is in relation
small,
to what's happening.
And I am not the authority here. I certainly defer to our assessor or auditor should they wish to jump in. However, there is a lag, as we know, with the roll, et cetera. And so what we see here is, I think, more consistent with past, and I know they're working very hard to get the roll cut up, and I think we'll start to see, as that happens, likely larger increases. But increases as a result of our current market, I think, are still premature as it relates to this budget. But again, that is not a statement of, that is an educated guess. I defer to our auditor and our assessor.
Thank you.
Okay, so the comparisons by major fund appropriations, we just went over. So general fund appropriations are up. And part of the reason for that is the increase of fund balance, the increased revenue that we have, increases in our MOU's ongoing salary progression, et cetera, increases in services and supplies. Also, we see a slight increase in public works. Integrated waste has gone down. The reason for that is because the cell is not currently budgeted as a capital improvement project in the amount that it was, which is about $2 million. When we look here at Health and Human Services, essentially flat. CIP is much higher, and this is a result of public works projects. And then others are more or less essentially the same. So looking at the general fund expense trend for this period, services, salaries and benefits are up. This increase is basically consistent with what we would expect to see in terms of regular salary progression, promotions, et cetera. The services and supplies budget is substantially higher. There were a few areas in which we could see that. The Butte Fire, there's one remaining project that was budgeted this year that hasn't not been budgeted or was not budgeted last year. That's 1.8 or almost $1.9 million. The jail bed competency treatment program that the Sheriff's Department brought to your board and was approved is a major contract in the amount of, well, altogether the delta is about $1 million, but the contract is larger than that. So that's a major driver. And then the third major driver is a project on the roads, or projects in the roads department to the tune of about $1.7 million. So there is an increase there. Those are the reasons. So other charges, here's where we see $3.7 million that was budgeted last year in the Butte Fire operating budget, so that are no longer being, that was basically reimbursement to Public Works for work that was done by force account as it relates to fixing or handling the Butte Fire projects. We see those funds have actually not in the general fund. Sorry, correct. Those funds are no longer budgeted in the other charges area. Capital assets have gone down. Operating transfers out have gone up, and the reason for that, is mainly due to the building department and code compliance transferring more money and or more money out rather to their special revenue funds. So in terms of the CAO criteria for recommendations as it relates to personnel, fulfills the mandate, essential function, generates revenue, or net zero budget impact. I want to make one crucial note here, which is that historically, at least in the last few years, there was a fifth criterion, and that criterion was operational efficiency and organizational improvement, process improvement, basically. Many of the recommendations that you see today in the general fund would be that fifth driver or criterion. The reason why it was dropped in this past budget cycle was because of the concerns regarding COVID and what our fiscal outlook was going to look like. But an argument can be made that that particular criterion is at least as important, if not more so, than the other ones on this list. So we'll expect to see with the class and compensation study that particular criterion to be addressed. However, some of the recommendations we'll discuss when we get to the position requests are being made as it relates to that driver, because it's been certain positions so far out for such a long period that it does not seem prudent to wait at this point to adjust them, and they may still be further adjusted after the class and comp study. So, let me go back, please. CIP, projects previously approved by the board, countywide projects that offer a substantial portion of departments' benefits, organizational improvement. Think about the technological enhancements or the D8 building, infrastructure improvement, health, safety, and well-being, and legal mandates, many of which overlap. So for personnel, I believe that conversation we should have at the end of this presentation, or perhaps after lunch. There is a spreadsheet that we can go over at that time. What is not on the spreadsheet, so I note it here, is a request for an extra hire grant funding and management position that would be in the admin office. Again, I'll talk about that when we get to the personnel requests, but wanted to note it here since we're not technically requesting a position, just funding for an extra hire. The CIP projects and capital assets. And we can get to those when we actually go through the book if you'd like. So other recommendations that are included in the budget, Sheriff Coroner Investigatory Budget Unit. If you'll recall, at a recent study session, I recommended and the board directed that we investigate potentially combining the offices of the sheriff and the coroner. I note for the public and colleagues that request came from the administrative, or suggestion came from the administrative office and direction from the board. In no way was this a request from the sheriff's department for this action to be taken. That said, due to the fact that while we still don't know whether your board will request that an ordinance be brought back to combine those two offices, should that happen, it would happen at some point between now and probably October at the latest, in order to get that ordinance on the books prior to when papers are filed for that office, so that we can have the proper office clearly being available for someone to file. So that being the case, both in terms of having some funding for investigation, but also having the ability, if that were to be the case, to have a budget unit at least partially in place so that the sheriff's department could make any preparations necessary, this budget unit is included. The capital asset that is included would not be approved, nor would a purchase order be issued for it unless that urgency ordinance were in place, unless that ordinance had been amended, the offices combined, and clear direction were given from the board in terms of next steps. I reiterate, this is simply an investigatory budget unit at this point, and should your board determine not to combine those offices, the administrative office will work with the sheriff's department, who will obviously be on notice that no further expenditures should be made from this budget unit, and then it will revert back to the general fund.
Ms. Calloway.
Why are we buying a refrigeration unit for the sheriff? Is that for
it
something other than bodies?
Well, if it were to be purchased, it would be further to your board determining that we were going to combine those offices, and I don't know that it would be for anything other than bodies. But it's not clear at this point, because it's so early in the process, that even if those offices were combined, that we would need a refrigeration unit. It may be possible to do that, both combine the offices, for example, and use our existing contractors for that service, or contractor for that service. So it's not clear that we would need that in any event.
So under capital assets, it's in there.
It is.
So it's in there based on the assumption that if we do combine, then we would need to purchase that?
Not as much as, I mean, that's part of it. I mean, we know that refrigeration is an issue that has to be addressed, whether via a contract or another a refrigeration unit, for example. That said, what we're asking departments to do, and if you'll recall when we were at mid-year budget, there was a lot of robust conversation with your board as it relates to not kicking cans down the road from recommended budget to final budget, and not kicking cans down the road at final budget to mid-year budget. And so when the budget instructions were released to departments, they were cognizant of that direction. And this is in addition to the fact that we know that if this ordinance is passed and the offices combined, the second part of the first part of 2022 would need to be preparation for when that would happen. So it's really with a view to being conservative and to try to get everything into this budget that we know right now we might need to contemplate in the course of the next year.
Anything else, Ms. Callaway?
So the community organizations budget includes $50,000, which would be $10,000 per district. The idea here that we're there and whether or not a public benefit finding might need to be made, but we are aware that there are, whether it's Parks and Rec, whether it's individual community organizations, some of which reside on county-owned property. We do know that there are entities and shareholders of ours that occasionally could use a bit of assistance from your board. We would really probably need to make public benefit findings in many cases. But by the same token, and I think, COVID has elucidated for all of us the need from time to time for assistance. It is a complicated issue. Certainly, $10,000 doesn't go very far. There could be far more requests of any one of you than we could ever possibly satisfy. So again, a policy level decision, but one recommendation that's being made based on feedback that I have had from a few of you as it relates to different entities. So something for your consideration. Parks and Rec funding has been budgeted at $400,000 of revenue and $400,000 of expenditures for Prop 68, further to the projects that were previously been brought to you but have not been fully fleshed out. If that funding is not locked in, then this will not matter. Nothing will be expended unless we are assured that the grant is secured. So debt service. Would anyone like to go over this slide carefully? Anyone? On the all around, it's up, but not by a lot, and it has to do with the HVAC. Thanks. I'm mindful of the time.
Ms. Callaway.
If we borrowed money from the RIM, it was a loan, so we need to pay that back.
Yes.
It's not a bond or a COP.
Yeah,
It's
not, so that's internal borrowing, and where we see it hit is with our fund balance, because it hits our fund balance as a liability, but it's not, and we will owe the pooled money interest rate on those loans to the REM fund, but it's not the same, it's not reflected the same as this.
Thank you.
So Teeter, we're as of 6/30 of this year, projected fund balance of 7.2. You'll see our annual general fund contribution of $500,000. Teeter transferred a balance of 3.9 and 2.4 million going primarily into capital improvement projects and also a couple of budget units for particular projects. The estimated fund balance, the estimated revenue is $800,000. I believe that figure likely to be low. And the estimated fund balance as of next June 30th, 2022 at 1.15. And the reason why contingencies is exactly at 2%, as opposed to perhaps higher, we could have recommended budgeting the entire Teeter transfer, which would have left contingencies somewhere around 2.8. But If you'll recall, this time last year, or adopted budget last year, direction was given to move funds out of the general fund reserve and leave a fund balance in teeter. And so consistent with that prior board direction, we've done the same thing here. So in terms of the structural deficit, we essentially spoke about this earlier when we talked about our year-over-year fund balance reductions. So this year, the good news is we're up, but the contingencies went down in part because of increased expenses and in part because of a reduced teeter transfer. We've seen historically these $3.3 million reductions in terms of year-over-year fund balance. We've seen now for the third year we are going in the right direction, but again, I note that our contingencies are at least this year down over last year, and this budget also includes a 5.3% reduction that we talked about from last year. So all of those are indicators that we have more projected expenditures than we have revenues. And this is an ongoing issue that we will need to address. So just to put it in a different visual, so when we think about it at a very high level, what our structural deficit looks like, you're looking at your revenues, your expenses, then you take out your fund balance and the teeter transfer. Because if revenues and expenses matched, then the funds would all still be essentially in our savings account. And then contingencies, which is booked as an expense, despite the fact that it's actually savings. And what you come to is this number, so 9.4. Last year's deficit, which again, if you add the 3.9 to this figure, for the CARES Act funding is essentially exactly the same as this year. And then the prior year was even higher. So you can see the outlier here of the CARES Act funding and where we're really running, which is around 9 to 10 million in terms of revenues being short of projected expenses. So options for future consideration for revenue, we can always look to expand our contract services. We could present a sales tax increase to the voters. We can continue to look at fee studies. I know this has been occurring and will continue to occur. And your board could consider expanding the cannabis program.
I'll add one to that. Getting the roll in the assessor's office caught up.
Perfect, thank you.
That is the lion's portion of our revenue.
That is correct. So
Ms. Calloway did have a very good point earlier with the housing market the way it is right now would benefit us ultimately. If it went the other way, not so much.
So
yeah, when that bubble pops, that will be scary, Gary. You've dealt with that before, so.
options for future consideration in terms of expenditures, we could reduce non-mandatory services. As we know, economic development, library, PATV, and the museum are not mandated services, although that is not to say that they are not important to the county. We could revisit the TOT methodology. We spoke of that earlier. And we could revisit county contributions.
If you could give me an explanation on revisiting the TOT methodology, what do you mean by that?
So the transient occupancy tax is a general tax, which by definition means that they are general fund dollars. That character cannot be changed. Were they to be special revenue dollars, and then it would have needed to be a special tax. So your board can, in fact, change the 25-25-25 allocation that currently is in place, or it may not, and may continue to apply that methodology in this budget cycle and in future budget cycles. However, it is ongoing general fund revenue.
And the final one's county contributions.
Yeah. So, salary and benefit related reductions. Obviously, we're going into collective bargaining. There are all sorts of, you can see them. We've been very conservative in terms of adding positions in the last year. You will see recommendations to add some positions in this budget. That said, we will be entering negotiations, and so there is a question mark there in terms of how that will affect our bottom line going forward. And just thank yous to your board, the auditor, controller, IT, admin staff, which I know has done just an unbelievable job considering. We've got a new team that is really knocking it out of the park, and I just can't thank them enough. Summer, Jamie, and Denise, really, thank you. Thanks everyone, including HR, department heads, and fiscal staff. I don't have to remind anyone, this has been an incredibly challenging 15 months. Budget is never easy, but this is 2 years in a row of asking for budgets to be lean, and departments have absolutely stepped up and done what we asked. So for that, I am really incredibly grateful, and would like everyone to know it. So we're a little past noon here, but just to finish off with the recommendation, we move forward with the hearing, provide direction on any changes you might like to see in the budget in September, adopt on June 22nd the budget, the capital assets resolution, the other resolutions, and then conduct a study session in August or late July perhaps as it relates to the American Rescue Plan funding, and August after the fiscal year end books are closed, and then bring back the adjustments to the adopted budget in September. And with that, I'll take any questions, or Mr. Chair, if you'd like to break.
Providing there's no hot questions for the moment, I would like to take a lunch break. Ms. Callaway, do you have something before we do take break? Is everyone fine with taking lunch and processing this and coming back? Then don't hear any complaints, then that's what we'll do. We'll return at
1:35.
1:30. 2. 1:30.